everyone. Good morning, good evening. I see many people joining in from different parts of the world. On the panel itself as well, we've got an intercontinental, folks joining us. So a very warm welcome to everyone who has joined us today for this amazing session on Beyond Support, how the online communities drive customer success. So we've got two very proficient and seasoned community experts joining us all the way from two different continents. I've got Omaima from Schneider Electric. She's the Global Customer Engagement Leader, joining us from France. Hi, Omaima.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Varun. Thanks for having me, and happy to have this great conversation going with Brian.
Likewise. Hey, Brian. So Brian is joining us from the US. Needs no introduction in the community world, of course. Hi, Brian.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us. And I will be your host for the day. My name is Varun Luthra, and I'm joining you from Sydney, Australia. Just one final disclaimer before we dive into this amazing session. Kindly forgive any errors from my side, as it is 3 a.m. When it is the hour when mistakes are allowed to dance. So kindly bear with me if there are any slip of tongues. So without any further ado, let us begin this insightful session. So Brian, I would like to start with you, because, who is the better person to get, an opinion, person who has had different roles, right from being a community moderator to a community manager to now a chief community officer across various organizations, and you talk to different people, peers, customers, prospects day in and day out. So could you please share us your insights on the connection between the online communities and the customer success?
Yeah, I think probably the best thing to do here to start is to sort of set, for everybody kind of the history of this, right? We were talking about it a little bit, I think, before people got on, which is that sometime maybe 8 to 10 months ago, specifically in tech, right, and software, when things started to slow down a little bit. There were some concerns, at least in the United States, about inflation and economic factors and those sorts of things. We saw a bunch of companies sort of shift their mindsets, right, from that kind of growth at all cost mindset to more of, hey, if we're not going to grow over the next year, a couple of years, then we really need to focus on how do we keep our existing customers and how do we keep them happy and how do we keep them coming back for more, right? So I think that's kind of the context in which this conversation is taking place. What I've seen over that time, over the last several months, and working with clients, talking to people in the industry, so on and so forth, industry events as well that I've been to around this stuff, is that customer success teams are really in the driver's seat right now because the mandate from companies to really build out this retention, you hear a lot of terms, right? We should say some of the terms are like scalable customer success, digital customer success, digital hub, right? We're hearing kind of different terms from the CS world that really kind of mean kind of the same things we've been talking about in community for a while. So I think we need to just help them kind of, understand like, hey, this is a fit, like this can help if that's what you're trying to do. I think if you're a customer success professional looking at, how do we better onboard our customers in a more efficient and scalable way? How do we enable them without everything being a one-to-one CSM conversation? How do we really deliver that kind of like digital education, e-learning, that experience without it being so high touch and, white glove like maybe we were doing before. And ultimately, I think what all of that comes down to is like, that's the benefit on the customer side. We know from talking to customers and surveys that they actually prefer to self-service and find answers and do those things. But it also has the internal value, which we'll talk a little bit more later on, but where CSMs can just be more efficient, right? Because like support, we're offloading a lot of those, kind of repetitive tasks and things they do every day to a more scalable self-service environment. So I think there's actually a really close relationship between success and, what we would call community, what they would call digital hub or digital success. It turns out it's all kind of cut from the same cloth, and, we can work together to find value.
Yeah, excellent. So, like you mentioned, different names for the community. Somebody calls it digital hub, and there are many names to it. So, thanks for setting the stage up, Brian. Really appreciate your insights. Omaima, coming to you. So, you've been leading the Schneider Electric community, for a while now. So, can you share us, what strategies that your company or you have employed to reach those engagements in the community to increase the engagement? We were briefly sort of chatting about, that increase in the number of, either retaining the users, more conversations, more people joining in.
Yeah, sure, Varun. So actually, just to give some context, we launched our community back in April 2019. So before COVID happened, obviously, and just keep that in mind because COVID came and disrupt basically the whole community, I would say, world. And that's where we really noticed that there was this need of digital interactions, digital support, but it goes way beyond digital support. Because we launched it first to provide a space for co-innovation and a space for digital customer support on the Schneider products and the Schneider electric softwares and just services. And it was working fine in the beginning, a new channel for our customers and partners for them to have a quick, efficient digital support. And then COVID happened, right? And we noticed that obviously our customers or our partners will come to the community the first time because they will need support related to the usage of their product, but they will come back, and that's the most important part, the retention part. If they find a space where they can not only interact, have their problem, their technical issue solved, but also a space where they can interact with other peers that share the same work than them, that use the same products than them. And ultimately, and we really noticed that during the COVID period, they will come to exchange with other customers and partners on best practices or just on how their life was going, their work was going with the new normal at that time. So definitely, yeah, you need to find and to create a space where you can provide support, but you can also provide a space for interactions that can go beyond that. They will share their best work. We have this software called EcoStructure Building Operation, and what one of our most successful and engaging thread is about our partners and customers sharing their best dashboards, for example. So this is where you notice that it's not just about support, it's about creating a community around a same usage and same interests and same work. And sometimes they will even leverage community so that they can get some leads, because if a partner will share, I would say, an opportunity of leads, another partner can get and get this from them. So this is just some success stories that we were able to create in community. What it made us adapt at Schneider is to extend the contributors to more than just the organization, the customer support organization. We have now contribution from our product marketing teams, R&D teams that get customer feedbacks from community and integrate that to the products. I will maybe share more about this later during this conversation. And also, of course, what we noticed is that the user interface of 2019 is not the user interface that we have today. We had to adapt, provide something way more modern, provide some new features and integrate more AI to our community discussion so that we make sure that whatever our customers or members, visitors are coming to the community for, they're able to find that very fast with the less clicks possible. To do that, we also had to integrate community in the other Schneider instances. What we wanted to do is to make sure that at every touch point, not only post-sales, but also pre-sales, if someone goes to the Schneider Electric official website and is looking for what is the best product to pick between two, they have the possibility to jump in conversation in community and interact with either experts from Schneider or other members to make their choice. So that's basically just few hints and I would say points that are very important. Again, to summarize, it's more contributors from as many organizations as you can, because they can all benefit and share content in your community. The second one is to make sure that you're always up to date with the user experience and the user interface. And the third one is to integrate your community as much as you can through your different other instances if you have that.
Yeah, great insights, Omaima. So, Brian, just expanding from what Omaima just mentioned, the integration between different systems, right? So once all that is done on the community side, then what are some of the key metrics that we should ideally look at? The impact metrics, some markers to actually see the impact on the other side.
Definitely page views, posts, and likes. I'm pretty sure that no, it's just I can't even get through it with a straight face. Yeah, I mean, I think what we want to do, is sort of move away from those operational kind of community metrics. We still need to track those to understand what's happening. But what we really want to do is move, to your point, to more of the business side of this and understand what kind of impact we're having, right? So I want to actually, while I'm talking here, I'm going to talk about 4 different things that I sort of encourage people to measure when they're looking into like customer success as a use case. Sometimes their community is all about customer success. Other times it's a component of it, right? But generally speaking, there's kind of 4 buckets of things that people measure. One is, of course, the retain. We talked about retention before and how important that is to CS. And so typically you do some sort of cohort analysis to understand, do accounts with community users, do they stay longer, right? What's their retention rate? What's their churn rate versus people not in the community? And so typically we can start to establish some sort of baseline and benchmark to understand, hey, turns out people that are in the community are happier and stay longer and tend to renew their contract, right? And that can be a huge story that we can tell internally to get more buy-in and understanding of why community is important, and overall just the impact it's having on the company and our success efforts. The second one, of course, is expansion, right? So it's great if we're keeping these customers around, but the real question becomes, how is community helping us expand those accounts? Are they buying more? Are they upgrading? Are they, transitioning from a free trial to a paid trial, whatever those different things might be in your business. As we were just talking about a minute ago, this is where the content really comes in handy around success, right? Success stories, use cases, those kinds of things. And that's why I think we've seen a move to more content like that in a lot of communities, is because success teams have found out that the more they expose different use cases and stories to other customers, the more likely those customers are to say, oh, I actually didn't know the product could do that, or I didn't know other people were doing this, or, oh, I can go download the workflow and get it on my machine and test it and see, or, maybe it's a use case for a different department. If I'm in, marketing at a company and I'm in the community, maybe I see a use case that would be interesting to our finance team. And I can say, hey, I saw this on the community, right? So there's a lot of benefit to getting people in community and exposing them to the various use cases. And that's why we see user groups playing such a big role as well, right? Because people come and they present what they're doing. And that gives other people a lot of great ideas. The third one is happiness, of course, CSAT, NPS, customer health score, however you measure it in your organization. Again, we can do cohort analysis here, or we can just directly ask them through surveys. And this one, I think, especially on the customer health score side of things, is, you have all of the data typically. And so this is like one that's pretty easy to make the connection and say, hey, turns out that customers that are in the community are happier. And then we might say, well, why is that? And it goes back to what we were talking about before around onboarding, enablement, and education, right? It turns out customers that are more educated about your product tend to be happier. Who knew, right? What a crazy idea. And so, we can measure those things and tie those together as well. The final one is efficiency. As I mentioned before, efficiency for our customers, that they don't have to wait for a response to an email or, for someone to pick up the phone or whatever the case might be, but also efficiency internally, right? Like overall, what we should be able to do is prove that the community is helping us lower our total cost of actually delivering our success to customers and retention, right? So oftentimes companies will measure this as like cost to retain a customer. They can break it down into essentially a unit cost like that. And then again, we can do the cohort analysis and see, hey, people that are active in community and taking our learning modules and engaging in our onboarding and all that stuff, turns out there's a lot less touches with them, or at least a lot less of the white glove one-to-one touches, right? So those are kind of the four areas that I think most people should be looking at measuring. Or if you don't have a community yet and you're sort of exploring this, those are the kinds of things, that community can deliver as far as value goes for a CS organization.
Great points, Brian. So, Omaima, I think Brian just mentioned some of the internal values, like retention, expansion, happiness, and efficiency. So, in your experience, have you seen that being utilized, to drive the customer success as a part of the Schneider Electric community that you may see on maybe day-to-day basis or whenever you're doing the analysis?
Oh yes, totally. And we actually have a whole set, and we have someone in our team dedicated just to track all those data and I would say the analytics part for our community. And for that, not only we leverage what is already proposed or embedded in our product, we use Chorus as a technology, but we also use Google Analytics, and for the SEO, we have also a bunch of tools and I would say accounts that we use to follow up on all that. Something that Brian mentioned that I think is very important is the education part and how that can really impact the retention and just the net promoter score, like the happiness of your members. And it's something that we noticed a lot, because yes, conversations are very important when you have a community, but you also have to come up with your own content, and this has to be pretty diverse, I would say, so that you can get and touch as many customers and partners as possible. So for that, you will find, or we started publishing technical blogs. We started also publishing some, I would say, validated knowledge-based articles. So taken the conversations that we have in our forums and their solution in the thread of conversation, we will prepare a ready-to-use article with the issue, the environment, the solution, and those are the content or the articles that are the most visited and the most used in the community, because what they want is what your customers want is the solution. So if you can provide that to them quickly without having to go through a whole conversation, obviously they will take it. So if we can simplify their life, that's pretty good. And of course there are other, I would say, I would say features or things that really can make the difference. I will take some companies that I think do a great job with their communities. Cisco, for example, I really like their community, not only because it's very engaging. They have, I would say, more than 10,000 logged users on a daily basis, and they have 1 million plus conversations that are already available on their website. But what I really like with their community is that because it's engaging, they're putting a big focus on their member recognition. They have a whole Hall of Fame for their most active members, and believe it or not, it's something that is very important for your members. They need recognition. Everyone's like to be visible, to be put, I would say, on the spotlight for their activity and what they do in your community. That will definitely make them happy. So it's something that I really like from Cisco. And I also like the fact that they have a huge catalog of webinars on demand, but also some live webinars that they will prepare. And to have this exclusivity and to propose this type of content that is very informative, and the customers, the visitors, the members, they like this type of content, because on top of their specific need, they will get to learn something new. And I think it's very important. Their interface is not, I would say, that modern. And that's why I would say, as a second example, I really like the Google Nest community. I think it's a very successful one because their user interface is amazing, but because most of us use Google on a daily basis, so we're used to that, and they keep that in their community. And the way it's organized is that they will push a blog or just industry trend content, self-serve content, I would say, at the top of their community. And because it's a business to customer community, most of the interactions that you will find there will be interactions between users of Google products. And I like that because your community is very successful when you don't even have to, I would say, provide answers. The other customers will do the work for you, and they will just interact and provide the solutions between them. So it's something that I like a lot, and it's also an international community. And obviously, even if you have the possibility to translate the content, you will find in your thread or your just your feed, you will find a lot of conversations that are in different languages, and it's something that I think is a good way to also assess if a community is successful or not. You attract people from everywhere, and they know that, okay, maybe most of the conversation are in English, but even if I publish my question in Spanish, it's a big engaging community. There's always someone that will provide me the answer in Spanish, or even if it's in English, I will just have to translate it. So to summarize, I would say it's very important to really provide a variety of content, a variety of exclusive content. Listen also to whatever your customers and your members have to say, because if they're looking for a specific content or a specific type of documentation, if they want something, they will say it to you. Like, they will not be shy. They will say to you, it's to you. It's now, your role to listen to it and adapt, provide the right content plan, and make sure that you connect the right internal experts or contributors inside your company with your community members.
I was just gonna, if I could just, you said something really interesting that I want to drive home here and make sure everybody that's watching really gets. You mentioned like the Nest community, sort of like consumer products and like the experience that they have there. And you mentioned sort of like, people's familiarity with Google, obviously, and those sorts of things. I think one of the things that I've come to learn over the years is that along a similar line, if you ever see those studies of who are the most admired brands, right? Or, what experiences do people like the most? We always see the same companies at the top of that list, right? It's Apple, it's Amazon, it's Google, it's, Tesla. It's like those types of brands, right? And I think one thing that's really important for all of us here to think about is that's the expectation level. That's the bar. Just because we work at a B2B software company or a development company, or we're servicing, some very specific niche of persona, the reality is we all live in the same world, right? We all live in the same place with these same brands, and we all use, I'm sure everybody here has probably ordered 3 Amazon packages since I've been talking, and so I think it's really important for us to understand when we talk about these experiences that's the bar, and that we sort of look at it as, hey, what would we want to use, or what do we like, and what experience do people expect? I think one of the things we tend to do as companies or people at companies is we look inward, right? And we say, well, what do we need to do to succeed? What do we need to get ROI, or what do we need to scale our customer success? And you should be asking those questions, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't, but at the same time, I think what we should actually do is flip it around and start with, what's the experience we're trying to build for customers, and why is it better for them, right? What's going to be different about it than what we were doing before? Why are they going to like it better? How's it going to make their lives easier? And I think if we do that, and we do that really well, then we'll get the value on our end. It'll happen, right? We'll get all of the things we're talking about, all those metrics I went through. I just don't want us to get too lost in the idea that this is all about us and our value and that sort of thing, right? When to the customer, they don't really care about our value or our efficiency or, the cost to service their, customer success requests to their CSM. They're not concerned with that, right? They just want the right answer. They want the right enablement. They want the onboarding. They want that experience. And so I think if you look at companies in more of the B2B space that, again, are, typically seen as, wow, their experience is great. You hear about Salesforce, you hear about HubSpot, you hear about those types of companies. Why? Because they've embraced this idea that the customer is actually first. And if we build the experience for them and we make it great, then the good stuff will happen, right? So just wanted to kind of like double down on the point that you made and make sure that we all understand that, because it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to go build a digital hub, or a community or wherever we're going to do all this stuff. But the real question is like, what's the mentality we have and how are we approaching it? And how are we thinking about kind of that shared value between customers and ourselves?
Yes, Brian, the amount of time I hear the word or we mention Amazon experience or the Amazon, experience on a daily basis is crazy, but I completely join you on that.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And of course, I think this webinar or session would be incomplete if we did not talk about AI today, right? Some of the buzzwords. So,
I'm surprised it took this long.
I don't know, you were sharing some great insights. I thought, it should have come by now, but yes, anyway, so I think, in your day-to-day conversations or, Omaima, even in your, day-to-day work, how do you think AI is now influencing not only the CS part or CSM part, but also the moderation side of things, or any other aspect that we've sort of discussed so far? If you could, take us through that as well.
Who wants to go first? I'm happy to go. I just want to make space.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, Brian.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Well, look, I think we could probably talk about this for hours. So I think the way to think about it here is it's clearly looming large, right? Everybody's thinking about AI. Everybody's talking about it. People are exploring these. A few key points to hit, though, about that. Number one, we haven't fully reached product phase yet of that. I think, we're starting to see some emergence of that in the market. But right now, it's a lot of technologies, right? It's a lot of APIs. It's a lot of developer-specific, kind of technologies. So I think everybody's kind of waiting to see, very eagerly waiting, who's going to build products around this that I can go buy and install, into my community or into this hub that we're going to build or whatever have you. So I think that's important to understand of just where we're at kind of in the timeline. The second piece is, again, back to the mentality or the philosophy of how we think about it. A lot of people that I've talked to that are starting to build AI, into communities or into these type of experiences, at a high level, they're like, hey, we're going to just, replace our search with like some sort of GPT or LLM or whatever. And I understand why they're doing that, right? But at the same time, the real question is it a better experience than what we had before? Or are we just doing it so that we can like check a box and say we have AI, right? So I think a lot of people, unfortunately, are going to harm themselves early on here by kind of haphazardly installing this stuff into their community without really fully thinking about, well, how does it actually work? And is this a better experience? And are we doing things that, actually make this better for us and for customers? So I think there's a long road, to go on that. With all that said, though, I mean, I think everybody should be thinking about this and dreaming about it and, staying abreast of what's going on in, kind of the market of these things, because I do believe that there are going to be very real implications and impacts and real products that are going to make what we do as community builders, very different. Now, is it going to replace us? Are we all going to be gone? I don't think so, right? Because there's always the human element of these things. Community, of course, in its essence is about people. And so you need people to work with people. But I think we can actually, all that value we were talking about before and making things better and faster and enablement and all that, I think we can enhance all that, right? We can optimize that with AI in some really different and interesting ways. I think we're just not quite fully there yet. I do know on the moderation side, obviously, Grazidi has a product around AI moderation. So that's typically what we've seen is like search and moderation are kind of the two use cases right now that people are really using AI for. But I think we need to get a little further down the curve on like the engagement stuff and, you know, some of those kinds of things.
Just to complete a little bit what Brian just said is this idea of wanting to implement AI or AI features just for the sake of it. It's completely this idea of looking inward instead of looking at your customers and try to understand what they want. So again, if it's just to tick a box, as you said, Brian, obviously it doesn't make sense, and there's still a lot of work to be done on search, on moderation. That's the big topics that we are also dealing with right now at Schneider Electric. It's very hard, but if it's to have a search that looks just like a chatbot, I mean, people are just done with chatbots. They don't want that. They want to be able to find exactly what they're looking for, and just not like a sort of like circle conversation. Look at this article, but it doesn't answer my question. But have you tried this? No, they don't want that. Okay, so human interactions are very important, and I'm sure that AI actually in the upcoming months, or maybe in 1 year from now, we will make tremendous improvements in the way we moderate communities, because yes, obviously there's a lot of room for AI features to be integrated into moderation of communities, and especially we're getting more and more members. So obviously you need something efficient and fast to make sure that the quality of your content is great, and that you're also able to provide quick answers and to detect the feedback or any, I would say, sort of sensitive information that you would like to put your eyes on very quickly. You know, you have hundreds and hundreds of conversations on a daily basis. AI will be able to put the focus on the right content for us as a team, as a community team, but most importantly for our members and our customers. And just to come back to one of the comments that was shared by Jody, and I see that many people share the same experience, is this fact of building a community around some internal KPIs or some internal goals. And the only matter is return on investment. If you want a good return on investment for your community, you have to put customer first. There's no other way for that. Otherwise, it's not a community. Go use something else, you know. So yeah, I just wanted to get back to this comment as well, because I think a lot of companies make this mistake of, again, putting some goals. We want that many monthly active users. We want that many conversations. But to create content just for the sake of it, to be putting so much focus on some internal goals, this is not the way you will have a healthy, engaging, active community. And Brian shared already a lot about how you can get a good, active community.
Of course, and I can already see, I think Brian have already mentioned as well, answered some of the questions in the chat itself. And Omaima, you've addressed some of the comments and questions from there as well. So of course, I mean, moving on, just to add to the AI part, I think many portions of AI are still kind of work in progress, and it will continue to do so for, I would say, some time. And being rightly used for search or some of the areas, I think we sort of have to go hand in hand for a while, to utilize the full potential of AI, as well as get the sort of see the full power of it. And of course, I mean, continuing with our discussion, any sort of key strategies or some areas that you could maybe give us options or thoughts on identifying challenges that are being faced by the users as a part of how you identify that initially.
With AI or in general with CS communities?
In general, yeah.
Let me answer, I like Matthew's question actually in the chat. What are some effective strategies for nurturing and engaging customer advocates within an online community? Omaima already talked about actually like ranks, reward, reputation, motivation, gamification, all those things. I think this is a big one though, when it comes to sort of like customer success and how they think about community and the value of it, is that, there's the serving our customers and making them happy and keeping them longer and that sort of thing. But there's also the, how do we get our customers doing those activities as well, right? So in a support world, we would talk about this in terms of experts or super users or a term like that. In CS world, we think of it more about advocates, right? So I think one thing that's important to understand is that there's sort of these, there's this Venn diagram, if you imagine this in your mind, of people that are really active in community and answer a lot of questions or are very helpful, and then advocates, right? Just because someone spends a lot of time in community and answers a lot of questions or helps people doesn't necessarily mean that they're an advocate, right? Sometimes the most active users are actually detractors or people that are frustrated and that sort of thing. So I think it's important as a baseline to understand the difference between someone who's really active and someone who likes us or will say nice things. So I think once you understand those two things, now you can sort of target that second group and say, okay, who are the people that are speaking at conferences on our behalf? Who are the people that are potentially leading user groups? They're writing content, maybe they're doing guest blogs or podcast interviews or whatever the case might be, where they're talking about us, right? And they're talking about our products and our services and what we do. So I think it's important to kind of understand what those activities are that sort of signify someone might be an advocate. And then you can build some sort of program around it where you say, okay, maybe we make this a formal thing, we invite them in, we give them some sort of status or, again, rank, reputation, whatever. And then we provide them even more opportunities, right? This is the big part, is that a lot of companies will say, Varun, you're an advocate, so awesome, advocate for us. But what they don't do is actually say how, or can we generate opportunities for you to do that? Hey, would you like to be a guest on our podcast? Would you like to speak at this conference? We have 2 free passes next month. Actually building a formal program by which you help people advocate more. It's not just going to happen on its own, or it may, but if you want to actually build more of it, you have to invest in it like anything else, right? So I think that's a really good question. There's, of course, a lot more to it. I could probably spend a whole day talking about that, but I think for now, hopefully that answers Matthew's question there.
Yeah, and if I may complete, Brian, what you just said, because we have a good example with community, especially at the beginning, back in 2019, when we launched the community, we had a bunch of members that were very active by answering questions of other members. And we found that very interesting, because we were just wondering, okay, why this member is spending so much time in community, just nicely and voluntarily answering questions from other customers and partners. So I reached out to Vasil at that time, who's actually a part of one of our internal program, and he was a certified partner of Schneider Electric. So I discussed with him to try to understand a little bit more his activity in the community, and his answer was very interesting, because he just basically told me, your community makes me gain a lot of time on a daily basis with everything I have to do. So for me, it's the least I can do is to give back some of this time to help other peers with their work. And I actually thought it was very interesting, very nice of him. We identified some other members in the community that were doing the same thing, and what we did is to just first thing, make them feel seen. So we just formally thank them, even higher management to contact them and thank them for their investments in the community. And we just ask them, how can we help you, or how can we thank you? Is there anything, any type of, I would say, specific service at Schneider that we can maybe offer to you, or that you would like to have access to, and create this like sort of, I would say, just preferred relationship with him and with his company to facilitate some of their maybe some of their issues or any type of interactions or relationship that they have with Schneider. We made sure that we were prioritizing that. What happened after this is that Basil became naturally, without even us asking him to advocate the community, he became just a natural advocate of the community inside his company, sharing and promoting the community to all of his colleagues and his peers. And that's what made them come and register to the community and start choosing the community as well. We also invited him to some of our Schneider events, the innovation summits that we held on a yearly basis, with the whole trip that was, of course, offered by the company. And he was able to just learn a little bit more about our products. And again, it was just a win-win relationship for everyone, but he was very happy. The most important thing for him is to feel that what he was doing was valued, that he was bringing some solutions and making some gain of time to other members, just like he was able to gain some time and efficiency with the community. And all the extra plus that he got, the conference invitations, all the other, I would say, perks that came with that advocacy. For him, it was just a plus. It was really the fact that he was feel valued and seen and just put on the spotlight that he really liked. So yeah, just a little, I would say, story about advocacy and advocating communities.
No, I think great points. And, since you both mentioned about the advocacy gamification, and that engagement where you could make a super user feel, super like, actually a super user. So I think let's sort of go back, to the AI part. How does then AI, sort of hampers that experience for the advocates in the future, right? Because there is not going to be any give and take relationship with AI. I mean, there could be potential super users, but not the advocates, right? So how do we sort of then maybe in the future, what are going to be the challenges in that sense? Those advocates, because AI is just going to be always active, right? So they're not going to be advocates, but will be super users for sure. So I think that's debatable.
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of, so I guess before I answer the question, one thing we should do is like educate people a little bit about how these models are trained, right? Because I think that gets to answer your question. So, listen, I'm not an AI expert, but I know enough to be dangerous. So for anybody on the call, that wants to kind of understand this at a base level, what you need to understand is that all of these models, these, LLMs, everything that's powering all of this stuff, it is trained on existing data. Yeah. Meaning, if a new product comes out tomorrow, there is no content yet for it. AI can't answer the question, right? Because it has nothing to train on. So I think what's really important is like, there's been all these conversations about AI is going to replace people and it's going to answer all the questions and that sort of thing. For content that already exists, that might be true, but we will always need to feed the models, right? There always needs to be someone, a human, in front of the model, building content, building knowledge, sharing perspective, sharing history, those sorts of things for the model to then train on so that it can answer your question when you type into ChatGPT, okay? Yeah. So with that in mind, if we think about, okay, what does that mean for advocates? Number one, they're not going anywhere. We still need them. We need their big brains and their value and their knowledge to be shared, right? But then there could be an acceleration of their big brains, right? So if we're able to point models at what they're doing and help use that to answer questions, recommend things to people, give better recommendations, all those types of things, then there's sort of acceleration effect of our advocates and our experts, right? So I think that's sort of the way to think about it. And then on their side of the equation, what are they getting out of this? Number one, their knowledge is going to be much more, sort of extensible and accessible probably than it was before. But the other thing is, hopefully we can build some tools for them too, that if I'm an expert in a very specific product or even a part of a product, how can the community actually give me a feed of just those things using AI to sort of analyze the questions people are asking and then point me at the things that I'm going to be best at answering, right? Just as an example, I think there's a lot of different things, but I think on both sides, there's actually quite a bit of value to be had. Again, once this is more mature and productized and we've kind of thought through it a little bit more.
Yeah, or AI could simply say that as of my last knowledge updated in September 2020, right? Just as an escape route. Great. So Omaima, earlier in the conversation you mentioned about integrating products, right, as well as websites and all those different touch points. So how about incorporating that user feedback, just to make or sort of ensure the products and services are kept up to date?
Yeah, sure. So for a few years now, we released an ideation space inside our community, and we made sure to make the contribution of product marketing teams and R&D teams way more active, I would say, in our community, right? Before we were really putting the focus on the customer support organization. Now we're diversifying that and making sure that we're also getting those experts to get those customer feedback from the community. There are two ways in our community where we get customer feedback and we integrate that in our product. The first one, it's in the conversation itself. So in our forums, you will get some questions or some comments from customers and partners around the usage of the product. And it can be just recurrent issues that are raised by the customers in the forums. They're always coming up with the same the same issue, the same, I would say, troubleshooting problem that they may face. And what we will do is that these product marketing team will get those feedback from the conversations directly and see how exactly they can if it's either a training issue, if it's either a product development, like a feature issue, if it's just a communication issue, they will try to find a way to, I would say, reduce the number of issues raised that are pretty similar, right? Now we also have an ideation phase specifically dedicated to our product development. And not only in those spaces, the product experts will share all the releases announcements, any updates regarding the new releases of those same products, but also our customers and partners can create their own suggestions or ideas, product ideas. Those product ideas can be, of course, voted, and other customers and partners can vote for those ideas to show interest and to show that it's something that they support. And those ideas are reviewed on a specific cadence by the R&D teams to assess if it's something that they can indeed incorporate in their product development. And if not, they will, of course, provide the reason why, right? Once one of those ideas are taken into account in the product development, the customers are following up the progress of this, I would say, development directly inside the same space until this idea is fully delivered in the product by the R&D team in the product releases. So they're pretty much for each and every community, each and every technology provider, there's a way to, or there's at least a feature or a template to get those product feedback or those customer feedbacks. Ideation is something very common for many years now, and it's still something very valuable today, especially if you want to incorporate those feedbacks for the inside your products. Now it's regarding the products themselves. What we do to collect feedback for the community itself is that we have dedicated, I would say, channels or communication with our top advocates in the community. So we make sure to provide a space every time we have a release. When we made a big change in our user interface, they were part of the early adopters or early testers of this I would say, user interface, and they were able to provide some feedback, and we integrated that before the official go live of the community. And we have a specific space dedicated to feedback just for the community experience itself and how our members would like us to change, or what they would like us to update, to improve, or to provide to them. So I would say that's the way to get their feedback. Just keep in mind that when you put customer first as your focus in your community management, though your customers, your members, they will share with you if they are not happy with something, if they would like to get something. Just listen to them. I think the most important part is to listen to them, provide answers, show them that we got your feedback. It doesn't necessarily means that, and you can ask them, obviously, Brian. Yeah, you can ask them, they will answer you for sure. But if they give you their feedback, don't ignore it. Show them that you listen to it. It doesn't mean that you have 100% to apply it or to provide it, because maybe there are some reasons you cannot, but just to show, I heard your feedback, this is when it's going to be done, or this is why this cannot be done, and this is something that we can provide instead. For example, that's the most important part. Listen to them or ask them, and keep the communication going to them. Show them that you in fact listen to what they have to say. Customer first, always.
Yeah, I was just laughing, and there's actually a question in the Q&A that kind of touches on this, which is Shravan said, how can brands leverage online communities to gather valuable customer insights and feedback? I think you just answered that a lot with, ideas and those sorts of things. But I always like to make the point that, we actually have to want to know the answer to that. We have to want to know what they think about it, and then actually have commitments inside of our company to do something with that knowledge, right? Every company in the world will tell you, oh, we listen to our customers and we care about their feedback. Are you doing anything about it? So I think what you just described is a really good example of how to go from the listening to the actually doing something about it phase, which is what's really important, right? And that, kind of to answer the question, that's one of the ways, we can use to gather feedback and provide value to the company, but also, to those users. They, like you said, they feel like they're being heard. Nothing feels better to people than they feel like they're being heard, especially if in 6 months or a year, their feature is delivered. What an amazing moment of celebration. I think the two other ones I'll just say real quickly is what I call early detection. We see this in support communities, but we see this in success communities as well, of what are people talking about? If there starts to be emerging trends of a lot of people aren't happy with this product or feature or service, or a lot of people are asking questions about this. Maybe they're not negative, but they're just asking open-ended, how does this thing work? What does it do? As a CSM or someone in customer success, that's a pretty good indication to me that, okay, we need to go build some more content around this. We need to build some more knowledge. Maybe we need to build another learning path in our academy for it, right? So in that way, you can kind of use the community as the, canary in the coal mine, as it were, for what people actually care about and the real challenges they're facing. And then I think if you want to be more proactive, I'd say that's the reactive way. If you want to be more proactive, one thing I'm starting to see a lot of people do is build advisory boards, which isn't new to most companies. Most companies have advisory boards. But what's different about it is they're hosting them in the community, and they can spin them up a lot faster, because if you have a community platform that has some sort of groups functionality or something like that, you're a couple clicks away, right, at any given time from saying, hey, I want to spin up an advisory board about this specific feature set. Let's get our product manager in there. Let's invite 10 people. And let's just drill down on this and see, what we're going to learn about it and how much. So it just gives you the ability, I would say, to be much more agile and, build that advisory feedback ideas, all this stuff we're talking about, hopefully in a way that you just couldn't before, because now you have a platform for it and hopefully some professionals on your team that know how to execute those types of programs.
Great. Yeah. So I think we are just, at the top of the hour here at least. Yeah. So, any other questions from the audience? I think most of them have been answered in the Q&A.
I think there's just one maybe last question, Varun. Sorry about that. It's from Didia, and it's how can online communities facilitate knowledge sharing and self-help among customers, which would lead to improved customer support? And if I may answer to this question, I started mentioning that earlier, but it's this idea of so many communities or many websites will use that as FAQs, but you should really take your conversations in the forums, and this going to be like your content or your base to create some self-serve content. And what we have is that we have the conversations in the forums, right? The answer or the author of the question will mark the best answer as the solution that helped them with their issue, right? What we will do is that if we notice a common trend or an issue that keeps being raised, we will create a validated or just an article by the Schneider Electric customer support team. And it's always the same template where you have the issue, environment, product, etc., and the step-by-step resolution, right? So that if someone has, again, the same issue, just by searching on Google for this, for those keywords, they will find this article first because it's self-serve content. And then we always provide the possibility, if it's not enough or if it's not solving their issue, to jump in a conversation or to create a question or to raise a question, right? So self-serve content is very easy to create, and you will use your interactions in the forums, the conversations, as your base. That's the simplest way to start and to improve your customer support. And you can also just, if you want to have this like sharing of content or the sharing of knowledge by your customers or by your members, it's again something where you just need to create a thread of conversation around a specific topic where you need them, where you need their inputs and their feedback. So they will just jump in this thread of conversation and share their knowledge. Everyone likes to share their knowledge. So just ask them. Our most engaging threads are the ones where our teams ask for our customers and our members to share either their best work, their best practices, their knowledge, etc. So yeah, use your conversation as a base and then just ask them if you want more.
I think it highlights the need internally to build cross-functioning collaboration as well, right? One of the things we see is that people build communities or these digital hubs, and it's like, okay, we launched it. Where's all the content? Where's all the engagement, right? And it turns out that you actually, that's a program. That's a strategy unto itself, right? The content program, where you go to people in the company that have the knowledge that's probably locked in their heads, and you say, how can we help you get it out of your head and onto the screen? And how do we build a program to facilitate that, knowing that not everybody's a writer and they probably don't want to be, so we have to build something that makes sense and engage those experts internally to make sure that there's a scalable way for them to contribute as well, that sort of like structured knowledge content or answering questions or whatever the case is, right? I think people often overlook that part, that it's a critical piece of building a community strategy is, how are we actually going to get the content, not just at launch, but ongoing? What's the long-term plan? And what are other teams around the company, success, support, pre-sales enablement, like anybody who's customer facing with that knowledge, how do we build a way for them to easily contribute and feel like they're getting value? Becomes really, really important, I think, to make sure that we can build a critical mass of this content for people.
Yeah, great. I think if I have to summarize this session in a few words, it would be customer first, AI second, right? Well, I think we are on time now. Thank you so much, Omaima and Brian, for sharing your wisdom and thoughts. Really insightful session. And thank you for all our audience for tuning in from different parts of the world. And of course, if you have any follow-up questions or any comments or any other requirements, feel free to reach out to us on our website. I hope we've answered all your questions, but as I said, you could reach out to us via the contact us form as well. And we look forward to seeing you for the follow-up sessions. We hope we've shared enough wisdom, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and thanks to everybody for showing up.